So, are international markets and investors hedging against the Turkish economy for political reasons rather than economic ones? To discuss this, joining me now in the studio are Selva Demiralp, who is a professor of economics here at Koç University, and Taha Arvaz, who is a financial commentator and columnist with the Daily Sabah. Welcome to the both of you to Straight Talk. Good to have you on. Selva, let me start with you. For the better part of the last decade, Turkey has been able to post some impressive growth numbers. Yet when you look at the current economic picture, is it fair to say that the alarm bells are going off for the Turkish economy?
I think it's partly true, because for an economy to grow at a healthy rate, that's the potential GDP, potential growth rate. For Turkey, that's around 5.5% growth. Now, for the last 3 quarters, we have been growing faster than that rate, like 7.5, 11%, and last it was 7.4. Now, people might ask this question, what is wrong with growing faster than 5.5? The issue is, if you are forcing your productive capacity, which is what we call overheating in economics, it's going to generate inflationary pressures. So you can think of this like a self-correcting mechanism. Like if you're running faster than your average speed, your heart rate increases to slow you down. That's what's happening in Turkish economy right now. When you grow faster than your optimal 5.5% capacity, inflation rate starts to increase. And for an economy like Turkey, which needs external borrowing in order to finance its growth, current account deficit and private sector debt goes up, which is reflected in the depreciation in the Turkish lira. Now, both of these channels, both the exchange rate channel as well as the inflation rate, is increasing cost of borrowing, which is slowing the economy down. So right now, the issue is, yes, if you grow faster, you are going to slow down back to your 5.5%. The issue is it going to be a slow landing or is it going to be a hard landing?
There is going to be a landing of some sort. And this is actually sort of brought out into the sentiment from the international markets. President Erdogan has often accused market makers of sort of unfairly painting a gloomy picture for the Turkish economy. Do you think that there is a bias against President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, especially after the elections?
You know, that's really not very clear, in that investors ultimately want to make money. So if there's someone who is betting against the Turkish economy and they have a vested interest in it going down, you're short bonds, for example, that's possible. But if you don't have a vested interest and you just don't like the current environment and you want someone else to be empowered that will help you make more money, then you lobby for that. I mean, it's people do or speak whatever they feel is in their best interest, in my perspective. So the question is really what's in Turkey's best interest? What's Turkey doing about that? And I would just add to what Professor Selva said a second ago. It's not just Turkey that's in trouble. I mean, the entire world. There is no one currency in the entire world that has appreciated against the US dollar. So when we talk about Turkey's currency decreasing or devaluing against the US dollar, that's right, but so has the Canadian dollar, so has the Brazilian real, so has the euro, so has even the Japanese yen. Gold is down 13% on the year. So there's a global economic storm brewing, and Turkey is just one of many people caught up in it.
So you're saying it's also partly because of a stronger dollar and tightening
liquidity
out there that most emerging markets are actually feeling this crunch.
Not only emerging markets, like Sweden is down 8% on the year. You know, Sweden is hardly an emerging market.
Selva, let me turn to you. How does Turkey weather through the storm?
So what we need to do, I mean, if you look at, for example, what Fitch said or S&P said when they downgraded Turkey, the report is almost identical. They try to understand the following. Do you acknowledge the fact that you have been overheating, and are you going to slow down this economy? So they need to see messages, and we have seen this in the pre-election era from Mehmet Şimşek, for example, that we are going to slow this economy down. We are aware of the problem. We are going to slow down, which is possible with tight monetary policy by the Central Bank of Turkey. And at the same time, in order to avoid a sudden landing as opposed to a soft landing, we need to still stimulate the investment sector, like provide subsidies, try to attract foreign currency like we did in 2002 to 2006 period. During that time, we had high interest rates, and yet foreign direct investment was attracted into Turkey because we had an agenda for structural reforms.
Okay. Do you think that Salva talked about Mehmet Şimşek, a previous minister that was well liked by the markets? Do you think that the appointment of the president's son-in-law, he does hold a PhD in finance, he does come from an experienced corporate executive background, he's actually successfully led a previous ministry as well. Has that sort of tainted the image of Turkey as well, or the outlook on Turkey?
I mean, that's what the press reports have said. You know, it's very. I've heard this a lot in a lot of New York Times articles, et cetera, Bloomberg. And this is coincidentally the 50th anniversary of RFK's assassination. I've listened to RFK, Robert Kennedy's documentary recently, and there's just one scene where he's the only guy in the room who's against thermonuclear war in Cuba. So yes, he's the brother of the president. Yes,
son-in-law.
The brother, Robert Kennedy, is the brother of John F. Kennedy. And you know, 6 years later, they passed an anti-nepotism law, which bars people from getting paid. So Jared Kushner, for example, also the son-in-law of President Trump, is there. But it doesn't necessarily mean that he's appointed this guy, the son-in-law is the minister, frankly, because he can't find a job somewhere else. It's because he trusts him. And the fact of the matter is, this is what happens in democracies. People vote for someone, and then if you trust them, they appoint ministers, and you know the Congress the Parliament can overrule if need be these type of appointments. So the question is really, I mean, if it's a question of, we shouldn't have a democracy, that's a different debate, you know, but I don't think it's right for Turkey to say, you know, we're going to let foreign investors choose our ministers. It's possible that they have good input into who they should be, and that's a fair point. But you know, it's important to note that this is a democracy. Elections happened, and this is what we ended up with.
That is a fair point. Let me ask you another question. The president is under pressure by a lot of economics to sort of hike interest rates. President Erdogan has said high rates are the mother of all evil. Does seem to be some sort of missing in between
right.
in terms of the message that wants to be given. Put that out there. Clarify that for us.
The short answer is, we don't know if increasing interest rates will actually help the Turkish lira. It's already gone up 500 basis points in the last 4 or 5 months, and that hasn't done a lot to help it. More importantly than raising interest rates are all these turmoil, all this global turmoil that's going along. I mean, President Trump and Vladimir Putin just had this bizarre press conference this week, as you may know. And there's trade wars going all around the world. The European Union is saying we can no longer depend on the United States. There's turmoil in Syria. I mean, there's a war going on, and we're talking about, like, you know, what type of tea do you want to drink? Mm-hmm. Obviously, I'm not dismissing the importance of raising interest rates, et cetera, but there is a limit. I mean, I've heard economists say you have to raise interest rates, you have to raise interest rates. Till when? There is a breaking point where the economy can no longer take that. Are we there yet? I don't know, but we'll see.
It sounds much easier than actually, it's a very complicated science, but Selva Demiralp and Taha Vars, thank you very much for joining us here on Straight Talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.